this evening for us. That's okay. We appreciate you being here.
Um, yeah, so I'm not sure if you had the opportunity to take a look at the notes from a previous review of the regs. Um, my thoughts are to take a look at those and just maybe start checking off a few sections at a time, um, going over what you guys think need to be updated, and perhaps not go through the whole regulation, but go through some good sections, and then we can just check those off and just make sure they are meeting the intentions, and also maybe taking a look at some adjacent towns' regulations and see if there's anything that we're trying to say that somebody has already said.
Thank you. I appreciate. I can't seem to find anything on that from you. I'll have to go in and see Missy and have her print it for me. I have a question about the regs, Tom. The issue that keeps rearing its ugly head is the sodium. Is the 20 parts per million, I believe that's what it is often going over, and people are upset when they can't get a CO because they haven't checked to see if their wells have passed. I was shown the other day something where the federal government has no limit on sodium. Is that true?
I think it's up around 200 or 250 for feds, but the MCP is 20. Actually, secondary MCP is 20. So it's not a health based, but it is a problem that people's utilities can be severely affected. It was another case where we were looking at people with high concentrations of sodium were changing out their dishwashers like every 6 months. It got to a point where a study needed to be done to find out where is all the sodium coming from, and we found it was coming from the salt use on the roads. It was getting into their wells, so it wasn't just theirs; it was their neighbors. So they did need a treatment system because it is a costly problem. Never mind. There could be at such high concentrations, there could be issues, but the 20 milligrams per liter is not a health-based. And we can find out a little bit more about that. But my thought is that we could change our requirements. There's some towns that require 2 tests done, one at the well head and one at the kitchen before occupancy. And then if there is a case where it looks like even if they're over in a secondary level, that they provide some sort of knowledge or treatment that they understand. Especially if it's a primary health issue, like it's a trichloroethylene that has a 5 parts per billion limit and certainly is carcinogen. Perhaps that they shouldn't be drinking out of that water. We should do further investigation and have if someone has a well already, that they have treatment and that they that they understand what they're what's wrong with their well. So it looks like
go ahead.
I was just to say somebody just raised their hand, so I'm not sure what.
Andy, all I can tell you is it's someone named Tom. I have no idea who Tom, GS are. There's 2 different people.
Tom, would you please identify yourself, and it's your turn to speak, please.
Oh, thank you very much. This would be Tom Fichtner, Board of Health member at the town of Minden.
That was weird because it came up as Tom, and I didn't know if there was another Tom. Alrighty.
Well, we do have
Go
two
ahead, Tom.
Toms on it. We got Tom and Tom, TNT
Go
with
ahead,
Tom.
Tom. Please
Why
go
don't-
ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I just figured Missy at some point would just use the hand raising to just let everybody know if there were questions. So not to interrupt the conversation, but I just wanted to, given Andy, what you had just mentioned about the sodium issue, I noticed something on page 10 that outlines the well analysis section of our current regulations. And underneath the items that it references, where it references microbiology, trace metals, miscellaneous, things of that nature. In the first paragraph under that, there's a statement in there I just wanted to read and just get some feedback on it. It says the federal standards of maximum containment levels, parentheses MCL, have been adopted by the state and incorporated into the guidelines for private water supplies. So I'm trying to understand, because it had been mentioned previously that the federal standard is much different than what I believe is the state standard. So I'm trying to understand this statement against what we're actually saying in our current private well regulations with regard to sodium levels specifically.
Okay. So is there a question there, Tom? Did I miss something?
Yeah, so the question basically is, my understanding was that the federal has one level and the state has a different level. And I believe that we are following the state level. If Tom, you can correct me if that's not accurate, but this statement seems to indicate that the federal standards of maximum containment levels have been adopted by the state. So is that saying that they're really the same? I'm just confused by the statement. Maybe you could explain that to me.
Okay, you asking me, Tom? So my understanding is that's for the state, the MCP for the state of Massachusetts. Excuse me. The Massachusetts standards are adopted, so 20 milligrams per liter would be a secondary standard that that they have posted. Whereas I did see online a federal standard. I think Misty showed me it was like 200, 250 milligrams per liter.
And we're saying, though, the federal standard maximum contaminant levels have been adopted by the state. It seems to indicate that the state has adopted the federal level. But you're saying that's not the case, because the federal level with regard to sodium anyway is much higher. So I just was wondering where it's a little confusing.
Yeah, so I caught part of that. Missy, did you tell me did you show this to me, the MCL for the feds? Any chance?
I actually saw it on well results, and
That's what we saw. Okay.
Yep.
Oh.
And
Missy, the one that was brought in last week?
there are different ones brought in all the time. Depends on what lab.
No, I'm just asking, the ones you saw on a well result, was that the one that was on a phone last week?
No,
Okay.
not that particular. No, not that particular property. No. But I
Yes.
did pull one that just recently came in, and on the bottom of that well result, it states what the federal limit is and what the Massachusetts limit is. And state is 20 and feds are 250. And that is what a previous board member many years ago, who was in the water business, so to speak, that's what he would tell me also.
So what Tom is saying is it sounds like the wording is incorrect, that Massachusetts did not adopt the feds, and Is that what you're trying to say, Tom?
Yes, it seems like the wording may be inaccurate in that paragraph. That's what I was trying to get at. If so, if we haven't actually, if the state has not adopted the federal standards, I'm just thinking that wording probably has to be changed somehow.
Might be one of those updates you guys need to make.
Exactly.
Because I don't think any of the wording that has come up has changed since 1997 when the regulations were originally adopted. There were changes that were made to incorporate, I think it was in 2013, don't quote me, to bring in radon as something that was tested. And then in 2017, you guys changed the requirement where you wanted an engineered stamped plan for the well to go with the well applications. So any wording might be outdated, and another reason for you guys to actually update these regulations.
I have a question for Tom Ryder.
Yes.
If I understood you correctly, you said that this is not a health issue per se, the over 20 parts per million. It's mainly just for the appliances. Is that correct?
It's a cosmetic, aesthetics, and yeah, appliances, pipes, boiler, heating units. It's, salt makes the water very soft. It corrodes piping.
Okay.
I'm looking through the federal secondary standards, and there's I don't see sodium in it. They have it for chloride, 250 milligrams per liter. So, I don't see.
Missy, what was the email you sent last week that it was an attachment stating I believe it was by email. I'm trying to remember where I read it, but it's stating the reason for the sodium levels and the understanding of it is the dangers of people with hypertension. They want people to know that moving their houses. Do you remember that email, Missy?
I don't know exactly when I sent that, but yes, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the fact sheet that comes out
Yeah.
from the DPH, and it does state, is sodium, if it's sodium found, yes, low levels of sodium are found in the water, and then what is sodium's purpose, where does it come from, and then in there, what is the current guidelines for drinking water and who should be concerned about this guideline. Mass DEP has established guideline of 20 milligrams of sodium per liter of water. If the sodium measures, and it goes on and on. For example, it is important for people who may be on a very low sodium or sodium restricted diet to know, for example, high blood pressure, and then it just goes on. I'd have to look and see when I actually sent that out to you guys. But yeah, that came from the state DPH site.
That's why I find conflicting stories there. Anytime my hot water tanks have died, it's been because of the iron, or what, so I've been told, is the iron in the water in Mendon because of all the ledge.
Yeah, that's
not to contradict Tom, but I just wanted to make sure that we understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, so iron and manganese is very prevalent in our well water. That too, yes, that causes problems with the hot water tanks, and leaves staining in the toilets and in the utilities as well. Yep, and the iron is a secondary standard as well, and so is manganese. So I'm looking up secondary standards for secondary standards for Massachusetts. I think so. I think indeed sodium is 20. I'm not seeing it right now though.
Tom, is there some, is this 20 number that we keep talking about, is there some kind of factual evidence that says over this is dangerous to your health, dangerous to your appliances? How do they arrive at that? Because it seems like we're running into this often. A few years back, we had an issue with a new construction, and the builder he came in with loaded for bear with all kinds of documentation. This is only a guideline, blah, 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 blah. And what we ended up doing was there was a document drawn up in the bill of sale, or I forget exactly where it was. We have it in our books that the new homeowners acknowledged, even with a filter system, they had a hard time fighting the levels of sodium. And the new owners acknowledged and signed that, yes, we accept responsibility for this. So if people are willing to take that chance, I have a hard time saying, why is there a standard?
I'm actually not finding extra sodium. I'm finding chlorides, and I'm finding 250 milligrams per liter for chlorides. So I'm not sure if this has been, quite frankly, I'm not sure if this has been updated. So I know it was 20 milligrams per liter, but the 2020. This is something I have to do follow up on this, because I'm looking at the secondary standards right now, and I do not see sodium chloride as 20. I see chlorides as 250.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not finding it right away. So, but I know it used to be. I know it was 20.
Well, that's something that we should find out about.
They could have updated stuff over the last year.
Okay.
All right.
Alan Greenberg, you've been quiet. You'd like to join us?
Yep, just waiting my turn. I do know that, water quality is a tough subject, and I think it's a very important issue. So I know the school had problems with manganese and had to put a special filtration system in. I know that we've had people come before us with sodium issues and corroding their bathroom fixtures, etc. So it definitely is of importance, and I look forward to updating our regulations to reflect what is, fair and reasonable. Thank you.
Andy, Tom Fickner has a question.
Your turn, Tom.
It would be for open discussion here. And maybe particularly Tom, I was just looking at what Tom had provided and his suggested amendments so far for some notations for us to review. And I was noticing I didn't see any particular commentary for adjustment with regard to this section of what we currently have in place. So I'm just wondering, is it from your view, Tom, do you think that our current guidelines with regard to these components that come under the well analysis should stay as they are, or do you feel there's any room for adjustment? Say, for example, sodium, but maybe other things that we have listed that maybe there's some room for reasonable adjustment?
Well, I would stick with, the backing that the scientists have for the feds and the state regards to for at least the primary for the MCLs. For the secondaries, I was thinking about we could provide a list of kind of like potential solutions. Like you have iron. The typical treatment is some sort of filter. Trying to get people away from just putting in water softeners. I was expressing a concern I had years ago, and no matter what the condition was of the well, the homeowner got a water softener, $5,000 unit. Oh, you have sodium, and you need a water softener, which is putting salt in the water. It didn't matter what it was: iron, manganese, water softener. You had radon, water softener. Didn't matter. So the idea was suggested guidance, and that's something we can incorporate to the homeowner bill or whatever. So, okay, you have a secondary contamination issue. How do you plan on solving it? Suggestion would be get a filter, retest, something like that. You have more issues. You have nitrogen problems. How are you going to handle that? New well, additional treatment, follow up. Not permittable. I don't know.
Okay, well, it's definitely something for discussion and review, to come up with some guidance maybe that isn't currently in place. And maybe potentially there's some room here possibly for some adjustment with a couple of areas. I'm also wondering if in our well regs, if we should actually list the actual levels for the folks to see if that's something we should incorporate. But that, again, that's probably for future in-depth discussion. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, I certainly would add an attachment and put as the if we attach Massachusetts MCLs and as amended, so dated 2020 and as amended, so that we're still following the most scientific guidance, because there could be a new contaminant. Perchlorate was added. We have PFAS now. They're every 5 to 10 years they're finding another contaminant level to after studying it triggers a problem, health-based risk.
Andy,
Yes.
I just want to let you know that I'm looking at two different well companies, not companies, I'm sorry, labs that are state certified lab. So one laboratory for EPA for sodium says there's no limit. But if you, and maybe this is something more to complain to the state about, I don't know, because they're both state certified labs. And another state certified lab on the bottom, they put mass contamination levels, EPA limit. Then there's got sodium guidelines, mass 20, EPA 250, and how a number sign will show the exceeding item if it's gone over. So I think it really depends on how each lab decides to report them too, because obviously they're different. They're not in sync.
Maybe you said it right there, Missy. Guidelines. So perhaps, I mean, that's it's based upon someone intaking sodium per day. So the guidelines is not even a secondary standard. that's something to look at. So if they downgraded to guidelines, then that's even that's more of a, like you said before, if you have hypertension, if there's an issue, if you have a sodium limit intake, that's something you need to be aware of.
But how would how would someone buying a new home, how would they know that? Are you saying that we should just let the 20 sodium go and it's not considered something that needs to be treated and retested?
I think we need to look at it.
Okay.
What happened to, because it used to be a secondary. I know it used to be a secondary. I'm trying to pull up some old regs right now to find out what happened to it.
I guess this is just something that shows that this is a bigger discussion. Yes, Andy?
The first state lab that you pulled up, is that the same lab as the gentleman last week was using?
Yep.
That's why it says no limit.
Right. And I
Because
said
that's
to
what
that gentleman,
that's what
I
you showed
understand.
him.
Right. And I said, I understand that, but I know that but in Massachusetts, there's a limit.
It's interesting that a state, where are they located? Are they located out of state, out of Mass, and they are certified in Mass?
Correct. The one particular that says has no limits is located in, I believe, Leominster. Let me just double check that. Yep. One is in Leominster, Mass, and the other one. The other one is located in Air. So they're both located in Massachusetts.
Okay. Do you remember the issue many years ago with the house on Thornton Street?
Was it Thornton? I couldn't remember which one it was.
Where the builder came in and was adamant that these are specifically guidelines?
Oh, I remember because I specifically remember that one. I can't remember the address because after that, because I would write needs a treatment and a retest. I wrote something about a lab, and from there on, because he complained because I didn't write down a Mass state certified lab, so he said
Right.
his results should be accepted.
Right, I remember. Yep.
So since then, I've been writing Massachusetts, Mass state certified lab.
Is that our reg, or is that a common reg? Is that state reg? What is that? That it has to be, and it, certainly I do understand why it should be a Mass cert because we are in Massachusetts. Is this just I'm trying to see, is this something that's been in place for a long time? Nobody's questioned it, or I mean, who's to say you couldn't take that? As long as they understand. Never mind, that was a stupid question. Because they're certified in Mass, that means that they know what the standards are. Forget I said that.
Yeah, I think they are, the state's been involved with their labs, kind of like certifying them.
So that they understand what the Massachusetts regulations are. I get it.
I had a teacher that once told me, no question is a stupid question.
I had once the same thing.
Normally, I would say you're right, Tom, but that one didn't seem like it made sense before I said it. But as I was saying it, I was like, nah, that's wrong.
Just mark this date down, Andy. Just trying to bail you out.
Appreciate that. Okay. So currently, we're not going to make any move, but go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, so I'm going through looking at sodium guidelines, and it says certain groups limit intake 1,500 milligrams per day. I'm not sure what that in terms of when you say how many cups of water is that going to be. So they're trying to maximize at 2,300 milligrams per but certain groups intake to limit to 1,500 milligrams per day. Then again, I didn't do the chemistry to determine how many cups of water that would mean. So
I've got a question for you. Do you by any chance, Tom, happen to know? And if you don't, maybe Missy does. I know normally we don't care what anybody else does. This is Mendon, but have anybody looked to see what the surrounding towns with similar type topography, the ledge and what have you, the groundwater, the heights of the water, what are their limits? Are they the same for other towns?
I just looked at Hopkinton's, and it does not say, and that kind of surprises me.
Does not say what, Tom? The limit on sodium?
It does not say the limit on sodium. And I have Ashlands. I'm opening up Ashlands right now. See what that says.
Missy, do you have updates on the other towns? Upton?
I have to go back and look because I didn't keep a log or anything. But only one of the towns around here did actually put into their private well regulations limits. And I'm going through Upton's right now quickly to see if I can remember if they had anything. Nope, they didn't put limits. So I can look into that for you guys too, as far as surrounding towns.
So if a town doesn't post limits, does that mean that they don't have limits, such as Hopkinton, Ashland? We can't find it in Upton. Does that mean that they don't have limits on their sodium? Or they just go by the state guidelines?
Sometimes there's like a little clarification, most up-to-date state guidelines. So some of these are changing, so they'll include what they know, and then they'll say and updated per state guidelines. I just opened up the wrong. I was like, these regulations look familiar. I opened up Mendon's.
Andy, Tom Fickner has a question.
1 second, Tom. Just a quick question, if I may. Why do we have to go more stringent than the state guidelines? Why can't we adopt the state guidelines? And that may have been what Tom was broaching with that statement that he read. Go ahead, Tom Fickner.
Well, as we're sitting here kind of talking about the different levels and measurements of things, I'm wondering if, since we have a couple of cameras operating, Tom, could you give me a visual for what this, well, with regard to sodium, since that seems to be the big subject, could you give me a visual on what that measurement means? So could you visually depict for me?
Hold on. Can I cut you off just for a second
Sure.
before I answer? I just opened up the Ashlands, and they have a note: sodium content shall not exceed 20 milligrams per liter in a semi-public water supply, and shall be reported to the homeowner if greater than 20 milligrams per liter in a private water supply. That's the asterisk.
So they actually will pass a well test result, provided that notification is made to the homeowner, whether it's a new construction or a well test after an existing home. They're not going to hold back a CO, but as long as notification has been given. Is that correct? Do I understand that right?
That's the way it sounds. Yep. So to complete the application, they need to do a notification.
That opens a whole new window for us, doesn't it, Missy?
It sounds like they're. I'm not sure if you worked with Ashland, but they are notorious for doing a lot of like deed restrictions. They have an actual form. D notices, not restrictions. D notices and restrictions. Thou shalt not have a garbage grinder, and these are the restrictions for the septic system. Typical thing.
Interesting. That's definitely something that we need to spend some time talking about, thinking about, coming back and readdressing, because that alleviates a lot of grief and aggravation, Missy, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm looking at Douglas's well stuff. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. But if you think about it, I mean, rather than saying, okay, your well didn't pass, you can't get your CO because you don't have a passing well result. Now we're not holding people up, and as long as you acknowledge it and you sign, we can have a form and say, you signed this form for the Board of Health that you acknowledge that the sodium limits are elevated, and it's up to you to fix it. And that way, and then like Tom said, whether it could be a deed hold, a deed restriction, whatever they want to call it, the next person that goes to buy this house says, oh, wait a minute. Well, usually it would be the bank or the lawyers that would find it and say, what's this issue? Do you know about this? Am I right or no?
Yeah, no, I think a notification.
Yeah, I think so too. Because I'm looking at Douglas's private well, and it says sodium, the parameter sodium maximum acceptable limit, and it says greater than 20 milligrams is a concern to person on low sodium diets. So I think it's definitely something that you guys can look into, and I think it's a good idea to put limits or numbers or whatever in the regulation so everybody's on the same page.
But it sounds like Douglas isn't so stringent where they're going to hold up a CO. They just want someone to be aware of it. Is that how I understand it?
So it might be something that when you have the private well certificate, you know how there's an area that you can write comments.
Yeah.
I thought I said something like this to one of you, but I can't remember. Listing, okay, you do a private well certificate, let them know that it's greater than, your sodium level is greater than what is, the guidelines, recommendation, whatever you want to put it. And that way it's on the private well certificate, it's on record.
Where does that certificate go once it's generated?
Probably nowhere. I don't really have people that ask for it.
Does it go in your file, or does it go to the homeowner or the builder?
It goes in, it's in our files, and then it used to have a copy of it go to the building department, but unless someone, a new owner or a contractor asks for a copy of it, that's as far as I know it goes.
Interesting. That should be attached, especially if there's a comment like that, where needs to be an acknowledgement by whoever's buying this house. That should be attached to all pertinent paperwork, whether it's, how they get a copy of the as-built, they get a copy of a COC. That's pretty important that whoever's shelling out the money to live in this dream house, they know what's going on.
Yeah, and not only that, I just would like to follow up regarding, some people just don't know what to sample for. They should probably be sampling on a yearly basis, at least for bacteria in the springtime, especially people with dug wells. They should be sampling, and a little bit of snippet of guidance we could copy from the Department of Public Health or create our own little spreadsheet, but they should have that as part of their package, perhaps. But not, I don't want to inundate them with paperwork, but
No, but it's pretty important. The sodium part is pretty important.
Yeah. Yep. You have a private well. How do you maintain it? Get to know your well driller and your and the laboratory for sampling.
So Tom, would you be able to visually demonstrate what 20 milligrams per liter looks like?
So I'm going to say that for 1 liter of water,
yeah,
it probably, I probably could fit it at the edge of my fingernails. And,
okay. I just wanted to put a visual to it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So is that what you were thinking too? But that's what I'm thinking. That's it's, 20 milligrams is per liter is not a lot of grains. Yeah, it's,
Yeah, it seemed very minute. So I just wanted to make sure that I was thinking along the correct lines. If, we're thinking about possibly being able to, even if we stayed with it, I like the thought that maybe we can simply put out a notification that goes with it to homeowners. That maybe becomes the answer across the board. But if there's some room for possibly adjusting our numbers, I'm just trying to think along the lines of what would be reasonable given, especially within our town, the geographics, what typically well drillers run into in our community with regard to water. What is reasonably acceptable? That's all.
okay. So as far as proceeding, so what section is that? That's under, it's under section 5, you were saying, and that's well construction permit requirements. And that it has section 3 has a well analysis. Do we want to work on section 3? Wait a second. I'm sorry. 5.5 is water sampling procedures.
Correct.
And 5.6 is water quality. So work on those two pieces to try to demonstrate that you trigger a guidance threshold. You trigger a guidance threshold when you sample what to do.
Well, at minimum, the water sampling, underwater sampling section 3, the well analysis portion, probably could be some adjustments. The water quality, I don't seem to be kind of straightforward, but you might see something there that's worth making a suggestion on. But it's more the analysis part that kind of caught my attention.
Okay. It does seem like the Massachusetts did adopt. I was quickly looking. I just got to verify. It does seem that Massachusetts did adopt the federal standards. I think I found that out. Okay. Was there any other sections that?
Well, I think it's a matter for us in general, just because we really haven't had an opportunity to review your commentary and your notes in general, for us to absorb them and then come back again on another meeting after we've had a chance to see what your recommendations are and then to discuss further. I mean, I had some other questions about other sections, but I don't want to raise them now until really I've had a chance to see. You might have already incorporated some thoughts, so I would personally hold off until I have a chance to absorb what you provided already.
Were you able to print my comments? Because I'm looking at, I put them on a PDF, and if you put your cursor over the comments, they appear, but I'm not sure if they print out. Missy, were you able to print my comments?
Hold on, I'm looking at it now.
I can't speak to printing. When I view them, they appear sideways.
Oh, they do show up?
But they do show, yeah, in yellow, yeah. I could probably rotate that around, right? Yeah.
Oh, you're doing it on the computer though, but Andy needs to print them out, so.
Yeah, I'm doing it on the computer.
I can't see where I can print up your comments, Tom.
All right. Okay, that's not helpful if I can't get that over to you. Okay. All right. I'll use it do you have the Word document of the most recent regulations?
Yep.
All right, could you send that to me, and then I'll, what I could do is, I can use the edit function, and then you'd be able to see on the side, the notes.
You'll have it in a minute.
All right. All right, so I can do that for the next one, but I'll focus on section 5 that we just discussed. And then we can say whether we like it or not, or add more to it. Does that make sense? Got it.
Makes sense to me.
Works for me.
I'm good with that also. Question though. When someone buys a property, second owner, third owner, don't we require a well test for water quality?
Transfer of property?
Yes.
I don't see it in the requirements.
There
I
was,
believe it's only for new construction, isn't it?
we do have something defined, because I was reviewing that, I saw that. Give me a second, I might be able to find it again. We do have something in here currently.
Yeah, I thought we did, but just because I think it doesn't mean it is.
No,
Power of positive thinking, Alan.
he's thinking correctly. Alan's thinking correctly. Just forget what section it was under.
Because what I'm thinking
It does
about
say it
is,
in section 5.6. If a water, I'm sorry. Never mind. Sorry. Go ahead, Alan. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
okay, what I was thinking about is the point that AJ touched on, that these water results sort of travel along with the transfer of deed from owner to owner. Now, that doesn't mean that if initially the well had a high sodium content and it was recommended that someone does something, it's very possible that homeowner did do something, whether they put an RO system in or whatever, but the second or third owner would sort of have a history of the well and know what was done or what wasn't done, or what was recommended and what was followed. Because you can have a well that has issues, and those issues can be corrected with the correct filtering system, etc., so that it becomes a non-issue.
Yeah.
Not only with outside source remedies, just simply flushing or using a well can change limits. Like, what's the common one? Like, when my well was drilled in '97,
Turbidity or
turbidity was one, and there was something else. I think iron was high too, and it was flushed, and it ran and ran and ran, and when they retested, everything was fine.
section
Might not have been iron.
section 8, 5.5, section 8, private well. Private well have a water sample collected and tested when transfer title to the property occurs, unless the transfer occurs 3 years after or less.
Where was that, Tom, again?
5.5, section 8.
Oh, 5.5, section 8, okay.
Yeah.
There you go, yep, that's the one.
Okay, so that issue is covered then, which is good.
Do people know about it though?
That's if anybody ever submits them.
Yeah.
Well, so that section goes on to say, the parameters to be tested are basic screen and total coliform, except that the board may require testing other parameters at their discretion. So that might be one of those things that we consider, whether we go beyond what we currently have or just run with it. And, then we kind of have that, use that notation element to homeowners if something's outside of our guidelines, that they're aware of it.
Okay. That sounds like a notification to the Title V inspectors.
Good
Yeah.
luck on that one.
What's that?
Good luck on that one.
You have a little faith, Nancy?
I 21 years, I've never had it. No one's ever submitted, and we get a lot of Title V, so I don't, how do you force someone to test their well? What are you gonna find them with?
Yeah, there's
Shut off the water.
yeah, so the septic system, septic systems within 100 feet need to be tested. So there's a few in town that might already trigger it, but most of them are compliant, Title V compliant. So nobody knows.
And this only seems to be specific when we're talking about a transfer of title here. Right? This is all around the transfer of title to the property.
Yes.
So
Okay.
does that mean I sell my house to my son? He's got to test the well? Or does that mean I sell my house to someone I don't know and they got to test the well? What's
Yeah.
the transfer of property?
Good point. Should clarify by using the same definitions in Title V.
I would think so. You got to have something clearer, because otherwise, every time you create an estate and it's under a trust now, that's a change of ownership. That's a change of title. It's not Mary Smith. It's Mary Smith's life estate. Blah 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 blah. So
Yeah.
it's the same person living there, but it's not owned by the title's different. The deed's different.
Good point.
I come up with one once in a while.
Yeah. That is a good point. And Title V had to change multiple times because of those scenarios that they didn't realize the problems they were causing.
It's tough to cover every base.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, do we have anything further to discuss this evening at this point as far as sodium or well rigs? Are we going to just chew on what we have and address it at a later date? Does anybody have anything else they would like to add?
If I put together some notes, when do you think you would need them to take a look before the next meeting? I'm not sure when the next meeting is scheduled.
We aren't either.
Tentatively, you would be scheduling for August 18th, unless you guys decide to push it out further to the 25th. But right now, tentatively, it would be the 18th.
More than likely, that will be it with all that we've got going on lately.
I definitely would like
Yeah,
to not lag on the topic. So if we could
Right.
keep it moving consistently, that'd be great. So if we could maybe think to incorporate this topic again, at our next meeting.
I'll keep it as a standard agenda item. But if you want to get specific, maybe you can put in, there's a specific part of the reg you want to discuss. We can also add that part. So it kind of keeps you on track as far as what are we doing again? What are we looking at? You got a, 15-page document, just more of a note for ourselves.
Yeah, and it's a good point because each of these sections alone could require multiple discussions and breakdown. So it could take a little while before we get through the whole thing, but that's a good point, Missy, just even breaking it down by section, prioritizing.
Okay. If I get it to you by Monday before the meeting, is that ample time, or I just can't really commit to before that. I'll make a try, but that would be.
I think it's a starting point.
So
Yes,
that,
exactly. I was just gonna say that.
so by the 16th, at least give you guys a starting point. What I'll do is I'll put in I'll use Word so you guys can see the notes and the changes, and then you can either add to it or subtract.
Works for
Tom,
me.
did you send that PDF to me directly, or did you send it to Missy and Missy tried to send it to me?
I
I
think
don't see-
I did both.
I don't see anything from you.
It was back in June.
I originally sent the email around July 27th, I think it was.
Okay, I'm looking at that date, looking for that date. Well, while we're waiting, Tom Ryder, did the letter go out to the pending salon?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I can get one of my computer geek friends, Tom Fickner, to come. If I bring my iPad over someday, maybe you can say, this is what you're doing wrong. That's why you can't open anything from Missy anymore. You used to be able to.
Well, I will tell you, I'm not an Apple guy.
Oh, okay.
I'm a PC guy. And unfortunately, there is a difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe Lonnie can help me.
Yeah.
Lonnie might be able to help me. Because I used to be able to open everything from her, then all of a sudden it just changed.
Yeah, my wife Jean's been having problems with her Apple devices between the her iPad and her iPhone, trying to do some stuff with emails and stuff. And she just discovered today a lot of stuff got moved somewhere, and she's trying to find it.
That's funny,
Yeah.
Tom, that you say that your wife and an Apple, and Andy, you say Apple, because when Jean was out about 2 weeks ago, I sent her some routing slips, and she tried opening up on our iPad, and she said she couldn't open up my attachments, but from here she can from her computer. So I don't know, but just an FYI.
But this is Apple, so that's going to be why. Same thing. I'll have to contact Lonnie. Okay. We
All right.
good?
Yep. I gotta.
Well, you'll find out anyways, Tom. But before we go, Tom Fickner, do you think the 18th is good for you?
Yes, 18th. As far as a meeting date, you mean?
Yes, so I can let Tom know. I mean, Missy can certainly let him know, but since he's already here, Alan, how about you?
Yeah, I'm good.
So I guess it's official, Tom Ryder, that the 18th will be that date.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, Tom. Good night.
Thank you, Tom. Andy, I don't know if you want to address the people that are on tonight and ask them, probably should have done this
Sure.
at the beginning of the meeting, just to find out what they are needing to discuss with the board. So I have Tisha Lowe and someone else that says GS guest.
Okay, Tisha, could you start, please?
Yes, present because I want to discuss the use of 25 to 30-foot commercial dumpsters in a residential neighborhood. I'm dealing with it, and it can't just be dumped. It actually has to be swapped out. And this is a process that takes sometimes more than 40 minutes. And a particular neighbor has instructed the drivers to do it off-site, off of his own property. I mean, I think it's wrong in the first place that it should be allowed in a residential neighborhood, something that large. It should be used for his construction business. Also, throughout the years, I've witnessed other people being allowed to dump in it, but now it's happening off-site, right in front of my house, like 500 feet, at least 500 yards away from the property where it's being kept for commercial use, and home trash and home rubbish and garbage as well. And it only gets dumped when it's full. Sometimes that's up to 3 months of house garbage sitting in it. And I've spoken to the complaint department at BP Trucking, and I was told that they do allow it. I spoke to someone who works at Waste Management, and he told me point blank, Massachusetts guidelines or household rubbish should never go into a construction dumpster. But I've got a child homeschooling all last year, and I work out of the house, and we're talking about, you know, the beeping alarm when the trucks go backwards. It's noisy, it's intolerable. And when they go to take it to load the full one, it tilts, and all this toxic liquids are draining out of it right onto the town land where people park to walk their kids, to walk their dogs. It's disgusting. It smells disgusting.
Okay. Could I hold you off for a minute? We have the general gist of why you're here. We'd like to hear from the other attendee. Could you please tell us who you are and what your issue will be tonight? What was the name, Missy? Missy?
She's muted, I think. There we go.
Sorry, I forgot I was muted. It just says GS guest. It doesn't say anything else.
GS guest, could you please tell us who you are? Interesting. Okay. All right, Tish, I'm sorry to have cut you off. I wanted to see who was here and what's going on to identify themselves. Apparently they're scared to talk. Okay.
Of course. I'm sorry I went off.
No, that's all right. So you are next on the list. Let's talk about, we currently do not have, it's been brought to our attention, and we do not have any dumpster regulations, and we're going to change that. This, just like you just heard with the well regulations, it's going to take a little bit of time and some suggestions from people like yourself, residents, suggestions from the board. And we discuss it. We're going to come up with a plan, and we're going to come up with some limits, because there are some towns around us. It's my understanding that there are some towns around us that actually do have dumpster regulations. And I do believe that it is a good idea and a good situation, especially I'm quite familiar with your property. I did a bunch of work out behind your house on that new house out back, and I'm familiar with the situation there. And a commercial dumpster in a residential neighborhood has a purpose, and that is if someone is doing an addition, or you've had a house fire and you're going to repair the house, you're going to do a roof, but it's a temporary situation. It's
Agreed.
Not something like you're discussing, right? That you brought to our attention. And I certainly do believe that we should take some action to have some regulations. This is just my opinion. There's other people on the board here too, and I would like to believe that they're of the same belief, but we have to hear from them. And this is how we're going to start to formulate some regulations. Tom Fickner, could you please step in?
Well, I would just say, yeah, unfortunately, Trish, currently we do not have anything formally in place for dumpster regulations. However, there are guidelines that do exist that may possibly could be utilized to mitigate some of the things you've described. For example, household trash, that's illegal. So there may be an avenue there where potentially something like going through DPH or DEP could be utilized to help mitigate that situation. People's household trash is supposed to be disposed of in an authorized fashion, not by that means. So that piece alone is something maybe we could potentially try to rectify if that's ongoing. I don't know if that was isolated or if that's a continuing thing you're seeing.
Oh, it's been going on for years and years.
Okay. When you say years and years, you're talking different sites that you're providing info on, or one's the same, not the same site?
The same.
The same site? For
The
years?
same. He's had a dumpster there since, many, many years. Yeah, many, many years. Since he's moved in, since within a half year of him moving in, and I think he moved in sometime in early 2000s or 2006, something like that.
Oh, well, that's an issue in my mind, as we're talking about household trash being disposed of in that manner.
Yeah, there's no other trash pickup going on there. Yeah. Or recycling. There's no recycling or trash pickup going on there.
Excuse me 1 second, Missy.
Yeah.
You know the neighbor's address, the subject property address?
I think I do.
I was just wondering if you have on your list, could you tell us, and obviously we know the answer, but I'd just like to hear it from you. Is he on the subscriber list for the town trash pickup?
If you give me 1 second, I can let you know that.
Thank you. Tom and Alan, I'm pretty sure Alan's aware of the situation, but Tom, just so that you know, this is a resident and he has a carpentry business, and the dumpster initially was for his business, and it is a 30-yarder. It's a big one, and it's just too convenient to use to drop the household trash in there. So that's how this gets generated, and it should be taken care of.
Yeah, I'd like to think we could maybe potentially take some steps to mitigate the trash aspects at least. That may be a discussion that we might have to have further, but if the household trash disposal in that manner sounds like that, to me, is a big concern.
It's
Alan? Go ahead.
Well, it's toxic. It's toxic too, because it's something I want to take up with the Board of Health, because when they do take it, even if they do it on site, and I don't know how far they are from Ingrid Morse's well, who lives downhill from them, but when they do it up here in front of my house, which there's no need of that, the liquids that are spewing out of the edge of it as they tip it, it's toxic. After trash and whatever else he's putting in there sits for, upwards of 2.5 to 3 months. It's toxic.
Disgusting.
Andy, I have that the last time a trash bill was paid, if it's the location that I'm thinking, it was 2008.
Quite a while ago. Okay. Alan Greenberg, could you chime in, please?
Yes, I actually, probably about a year ago, I received a call from a resident about the dumpster. The dumpster had been moved closer to the street, and when they were to exit their property, it was just kind of staring them in the face, and they were very concerned about it. They didn't want to infringe upon anyone else's rights to, do what they want to do on their property. However, when the dumpster was relocated closer to the street, it was a problem. So they called me up, and I went out and I talked to the homeowner, who I knew from previous years when he first located up here. And he was very receptive to what I had to say. and he told me that he was just waiting to move it back to where it had always been. He was waiting to have his driveway paved, and as soon as the driveway was set up, he was going to have the dumpster moved back to its primary location. And he said that his business is registered in town. He, felt bad that his neighbor didn't say something to him directly. But it seemed to resolve itself in an amicable manner, because I received a phone call from the homeowner that had made the complaint that everything had resolved itself and the dumpster had been moved to its primary location. So this is the first I'm hearing of, another issue with the dumpster. I thought that one was taken care of. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
I would like to add something too, if I may. The couple that you spoke to, they're an elderly couple that are still very unhappy with the dumpster. They still have to see it. They still can see it every time they enter and exit their driveway. And it's not the first time you've heard of it, because I've submitted an email to the selectmen, I think 2 months ago, and we're not happy with it. But this elderly couple, they just want peace. And so that's why they're not pushing it further. They feel like it was there when they moved in, so they don't want to make waves. They're a sweet older couple, and they're still not happy with it at all. Who would be? If everyone was allowed to have 30-foot dumpsters in their yard, it seems to be like the regulations are necessary. And that's that. That's like, and to have it being loaded and unloaded off-site to make all that noise when people are working out of their homes and children are being schooled in home. Not to mention the toxic spewage and the personal trash that's in it. That's all. I don't think I have to say it.
I'm sorry. You had mentioned a particular trucking company. Do you know the name of the company or is the name on the dumpster?
Yeah, it's BP Trucking, and I did complain to them directly, and I did also talk to the homeowner about it. I talked to his wife.
Missy, do they have an awful permit?
Hold on, I believe they do.
I would imagine they do. They've been well established.
They're out of Ashland. Yep, they're licensed in town.
Okay, thank you.
What was strange is that the woman I spoke to, who works in the complaints department, told me that they do allow personal rubbish in it, kitchen trash and homeowner cleaner agents and things like that. And I'm just so surprised to learn that, because one of my clients works for Waste Management, and he said that that's absolutely not allowed with construction dumpsters that size, because they all go to a recycling plant and they can't recycle the home trash like that. So he was shocked that there's no rubbish pickup.
We do have avenues to pursue the truth on that, and we will be doing that. So currently, I think that we will be as expedient as we can to get this taken care of and get some regulations in place ASAP, because obviously there's a situation there. Has the zone enforcement officer been up there, Missy?
I do not know that.
Okay. Alan, go ahead, Tish.
I had reached out to her on a couple of different subjects in the past 4 months, and I've never once heard back from the enforcement officer.
Okay. Because we did have an issue with a similar situation on Carpenter Hill Road, and that dumpster was removed. It was a commercial dumpster similar to what you're facing, and it was on a residence's property on his lawn. He runs a business, and that was removed. That was a good faith, okay, I'm sorry, and moved it. But that doesn't sound like this is going to be the case.
Andy, Tom Fickner.
No, and I,
Go ahead, Tom.
Trish, why don't you finish your thought there before I continue?
Excuse me 1 second, Tom. Just to clarify, her name is Tish. I know it's not a big deal, but I just want you to make sure you understood.
Tisha,
Thank you.
yeah, I
Tish,
see, I,
oh, my apologies.
all right.
Go ahead, Tish.
No, one of the selectmen, Mr. Tenio, said that like maybe do something like allow the kind that can be dumped, the smaller ones that can be dumped on a regular basis. I'm not trying to be unreasonable. I just think, something 30 feet is unreasonable, and something that has to be swapped out. It's a process, that noisy, loud process that takes over 40, 45 minutes. And also it should definitely be done on his property, not a semi-trailer coming up here and bringing it up to the town barns and doing it there.
Or in front of our house.
Or in front of our house,
before.
like what has been occurring. So, I'm not against any size dumpster. I think there should be a reasonable, something reasonable. And of course, if someone's having construction, an addition putting on, of course, that's always an exception. And there should be a permit in place to prove that such work is being done.
It could be an attachment.
But I don't want to wait.
It could be an attachment to a building permit through the Board of Health, where when the building permit is generated, what are you doing? We're doing a roof. How are you disposing? We have that in place as far as roofing. Where is your waste going? But if you're going to have a dumpster, then in conjunction with any building permits, it would be attached. Is that correct, Missy?
Yes, but you got to remember what the building inspector said at one of our meetings.
Refresh my memory.
I would normally hold up a building permit if I don't, asking the question, is there going to be a dumpster? Because if a company is licensed in town, one of the questions on the application is, where are you disposing that stuff? So when we had a meeting with the building inspector said that their building permit could not be held up for that.
Okay, it's not so much a matter of holding it up, but just acknowledgement that Board of Health and Regulations state that if you in fact you have a 10, 20, or 30-yard roll-off dumpster, which is different than a regular pickup like Tish is talking about, which I do believe makes much more sense. A smaller dumpster emptied more often. First of all, it's not sitting around attracting vermin, and it's done on his property. It's dumped, clean, quiet, gone, see you later. Not a big process. I understand and I get that. We definitely will be implementing some regulations on this. Tish, did you have something else to add? Go ahead, Alan. Tish, let me just get Alan in there, please. Go ahead, Alan.
Well, thank you. Tisha, your conversation with the resident, how did it go?
It didn't go well at all. She asked me repeatedly, why do I care? And also that to be able to do it further up the street, she referred to it as free land.
Okay. Thank you. That's not what I was hoping to hear, but
It wasn't what I was hoping to.
No, I appreciate the fact that you took your time to go to the resident directly and try to work it out, or offer suggestions that would be good for everyone. I'm sorry to hear that wasn't possible, and obviously we're going to have to step in. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you all.
Could
I
I,
did have one more question. How does one go about getting something on the agenda for the selectmen's meeting?
Missy?
If you want something on the select board meeting, then I would say you would have to contact either Kimberly Newman or Laura St. John Dupree. I got your email, so that's how I knew there was an issue. And that's why I talked to Andy about putting something on the agenda about discussing about possible regulations. But other than that, you'd have to talk to Kim or Laura.
Laura who?
Laura St. John Dupree, she works for the the select board, their executive assistant.
Thank you so much.
Tisha, before you depart, I just wanted to bring up something as we were talking about this subject, and I don't know if Andy Allen or Missy can confirm or not. Don't we have something in the bylaws, in our bylaws about dumpsters and about the usage of property in the zoning bylaws?
Do you remember when Billy Ambrosino and the planning board spent great lengths, I want to say it was close to 2 years, revamping the bylaws? Do you remember we went to town meeting one time? And I think you were on the board with us at that time when they were talking about, one particular part of it was specifically talking about containers. Do you remember that conversation?
I do, yeah, somewhat, not all of it, but
There is something in the planning board bylaw about the size, duration, and I believe there was a permitting process. We'll have to check into that, because I remember that man standing up. Remember, Selectman Tinio got up and left because he was upset with the question that was asked. Does everybody remember that?
Yes, I remember the response well.
Yes. I do believe that there is something in the planning board bylaws as far as dumpsters. There is a time limit. I want to say, I'm not even going to say how long it is, but I do remember a time limit and a specific need for such container.
Right.
Container. Oh, you know what, Tom? Was that in reference to a sea container, or was that in reference to dumpsters?
Well, I'm not sure. As we were talking about this, it just was jogging my mind, and I thought there was in the zoning guidelines that covered this usage of dumpsters, and I wasn't.
No, I believe that was sea containers, a temporary permit for a fire or an addition or storage, temporary storage while construction was going on. But I believe it was sea containers. I don't think it was dumpsters. But maybe we can read that and maybe work off of that as far as time limits and the necessity. What necessitates the need for one of them?
Just another avenue in addition to, I think from a health perspective, the trash is what is concerning
Absolutely.
me. But I think there's action we could take, irrespective of not having formal dumpster regulations within the Board of Health. But I'd be willing to kind of see what exists in the zoning aspect with regard to the topic to see if there's something there as well.
Certainly we can, I will, if I remember tomorrow, I will reach out to Mike and pick his brain, because he's a wealth of knowledge for us in this department. I think that's it for this evening, Tish. Thank you very much for bringing this to our attention, and we will be working on it, and hopefully we can get this done ASAP.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tisha.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
You as
Yeah.
well.
Andy,
Yes,
if you
Missy?
want, like with the well regulations, I can have this, if you guys are okay with it, as a standing agenda item. Because I think when you're creating regulations from scratch, you have to put a lot of reviewing. I can tell you that Upton, Northbridge, Uxbridge, Millville, Blackstone, and Douglas have some kind of either trash hauler or dumpster regulations. I know when Lenny worked for Hopedale, they had them, but I could not find them online. Specific regulations. And I don't know about Milford. I'm sure Milford does too. It's just not online. So it's definitely not something you're going to get done overnight.
Yeah,
But I think if it's a standard agenda item, we won't forget and we'll keep moving forward with it. But that's just my 2 cents.
absolutely. Until we get it hammered out, I think it's a good idea. Tom Fickner, how do you feel?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. I can't believe it's been going on that long, to be honest with you.
Okay, Alan Greenberg, how do you feel about that?
I think that's a great idea. Obviously, it's something we need to get in place. However, I'm more concerned about the immediate situation that we have, especially where I thought that a year ago I had corrected it, or at least got it under control. And I'm disappointed to learn that something I thought I had resolved, I didn't resolve. And I did like Tish's, and AJ, you chimed in on this, recommendation, suggestion that, he go to a smaller dumpster. Do we need to send the resident a letter to let them know that we're discussing his property and his situation? And maybe we can get it resolved quickly, getting this resident involved. Just my 2 cents.
We could do that, I suppose, but I do believe it will fall on deaf ears.
Given what you initially said, Alan, I think it would definitely fall on deaf ears, and I don't think the resident deserves any any notification at this point. I think what's required here is action to mitigate the situation.
Okay, call me optimistic.
Yes, I will. You keep that going, though. I love your optimism, buddy.
All right, thanks.
Love those rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, hey, they're hanging from the tip of my nose.
It's just an FYI for all on the call. The person who was a guest did chime in on the chat, and they just indicated that they were their audio wasn't working and that they were just a resident listening in. So I just simply said hello. Thank you for joining and listening in. So,
thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Okay. That's definitely a subject that needs greater, and like I said, let's try to be as expedient as we can on this and get some. Missy, could you, I don't know about printing them, maybe by email, and like I said, I gotta contact Lonnie and get this going. Surrounding towns, as brief as you can, just a copy of their regulations, what we should be addressing. I'm sure there's more than one regulation.
Oh yeah, I mean, it all depends on how detailed you want to get. It all depends on what is your end goal, what are you trying to do. I mean, it also, because some of these towns don't have, they're private subscription towns, so their regulations might also include something like that part. I know Northbridge, Uxbridge, and Douglas do not have town services. You have to get your own hauler. So, it all depends on what you guys are trying to do and get to that end result. But I'll be looking.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
But I'll be looking, and I think I have an idea of a direction you guys want to go in to start with this. So we'll just try. But it's definitely going to be an ongoing process.
What is the process, and would we be able to do it? I remember what planning board went through. What would this be able to become a bylaw, or is it just one of our regulations?
You could do one of two things. You can try and see if they'll accept it as part of the town bylaws. Just keep in mind, if there's a change you'd have to make sure you word it right, because if there's a change in state codes, you need to make sure it reflects that code. And that will require a town meeting, or you can just make it your regulation. You have a meeting and it goes forth.
Okay. Which has more teeth, a bylaw or our regulation? Because when it becomes our regulation, how do we enforce it?
With a regulation, you have to make sure you craft what the enforcement's going to be the right way, just like with Title V. That's a state code.
Keep the loopholes closed.
Yep, and make sure whatever you create is reasonably to be able to be enforced.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm asking. How do we enforce it if somebody says thumbs their nose at us and they still use a 30-yard dumpster and keep doing the process that they're doing. What do we do to say, okay, you're in trouble now? A
Well,
bylaw would be more enforceable, wouldn't it?
I don't think either one is one or more. I mean, you get your power from the extension of the state of Massachusetts and DPH and DEP. So, I think it'd also be easier once we actually have a health agent that can keep an eye on these things also.
Okay. Will that common, the one we got the grant for, getting the grant for?
That's the one I'm thinking of. I'm
Okay.
trying to formulate areas of review. Then they could possibly help us try to write a regulation. And we can muddle through it as we can,
I might, I will see if Mike might join us some night for conversation as not any kind of a professional position, but someone with a background that offers his 2 cents. If he'll do it. If not, he can do it off the record and just tell us what he's thinking. But I'm sure he would join
AJ?
us. Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, I'm thinking back to, when you mentioned how to enforce it, it's not like we can even call the hauling company and expect to get any action. If you remember in the past, we tried to work with, I think it was dumpster divers that had a dumpster and they weren't licensed in Mass down at the Legion.
Yeah, Legion.
And like you said, they just kind of looked the other way and didn't really care. So enforcement is definitely a tricky part of this whole thing. Back to you.
Well, what could have happened there, though, Alan, if I recall correctly, is that notification could have gone to the users, namely Sue, to say, look, you got to stop putting the stuff in that dumpster. They're not legit.
Could always go after the property owner.
In what regard? How would you do that?
Well, sometimes it might have just been just a conversation. So the more parties you involve locally to try to impress upon them the situation. So I get Alan's point about going after the dumpster diver group, but we also potentially had the angle of communicating with our locals that we kind of talk with on a regular basis about the situation. And hopefully,
Misty said we could go after the property owner, but
you could make it where you can make it. Some of these towns require that before you can have a dumpster put on your property, you have to get a permit from the Board of Health. The property owner has to get a permit from the Board of Health.
Oh, well, I do believe that we're going to be going that way. Absolutely. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I've got 3 things going on in my head at once. And that's not good.
only 3? Oh, you're slacking, Missy.
I know. It's getting late too, and I can only retain so much stuff. I'm sorry, I lost my whole train of thought there. Sorry.
Get derailed. Okay. What was
the last thing I have is I was approached by the town moderator. He's thinking about requiring masks at the special town meeting next Monday. I don't know who has that authority. I don't know if he has it, the Board of Health has it, the school department has it, or the select board has it for one-time event. I just want to let you know, I did contact town council and she's working on getting me an opinion. But I just want to throw it out there because town meeting is next Monday. And I'm not really sure who has the authority to require masks at the special town meeting.
Missy, I know when we spoke today, you had said that, God, I can't think of her name. Council said she
Cindy?
didn't know when. Cindy, thank you. she didn't know when the town meeting was. Just shoot her an email tomorrow and remind her that the clock is ticking. We need to have an answer on this by next Monday.
Yeah, I would actually prefer to have an answer before Monday, just so I can get it out
Absolutely.
to you guys to muddle it over. But I did tell her in the last email that town meeting was, I think even in the original email, I told her when town meeting was, but I will ask her for an update, absolutely.
Thank you.
I just have two, kind of, I guess, old business. Just a reminder that the Household Hazardous Waste Day is Saturday, August 14th. I think at the last meeting, Tom, you said you were available for that. I just want to make sure you are, and if anybody else was.
Yes, I am still available.
All right, very good, thank you.
Anybody else joining me?
I will not be available for it.
I will do my best to be there for some of the time, if I can.
Okay, coffee's on you, Alan.
All right, buddy. I guess that means I got to be there for the beginning. I'm gonna put that on my calendar right now. Coffee.
Missy, did you by any chance reach out to the PD for a detail
Yep,
officer?
I already requested it.
Thank you.
I gotta remind Mike to have the dumpster delivered next week.
Okay.
And the time frame, that's 9 to 12, 8 to 12?
I would say to be there for 8, because the event is from 9 to 12, but the metal dumpster opens at 8. So to kind of, are you here for the dumpster or are you here for the hazardous waste day? And
Right.
you can kind of get that line going. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay, and then of course they're also doing paper shredding as well, right?
Correct. Yep,
Okay.
yep. And the only other thing, just an update. I know I've talked to you guys, but as of right now, I have not gotten any well results from 4 Elm Street as of yet for whenever they tested their well last. And that's about all I have. Just want to let you know that I'll be leaving a little early tomorrow. My husband and I are actually going to see Billy Joel at Fenway tomorrow night, so I'm really excited.
It's going to
So
be pouring rain.
No, it's not. Don't even say that. We were supposed to go
You haven't
last year.
seen the weather?
No, I
I'm
haven't looked at the
serious.
weather.
I'm serious as a heart attack. Around 6 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, it's going to start torrential downpours.
No, we got.
I'm so sorry.
Oh my goodness, no.
So Missy, since you brought up 4 Elm Street, I didn't know if everyone had a chance to see an email response that I sent back about that.
I viewed it.
Okay.
I did too.
Okay, good. Okay. So just more information to kind of come from that.
Oh, I'm so
Very
sad
good.
now.
I'm sorry, but you've got to be prepared for that one.
Oh Lord.
Guns N' Roses tonight.
It's not raining right now.
Guns N' Roses at Fenway tonight.
Really? Oh.
Yep.
What rating?
Okay, we have our date set.
Yes.
Go ahead, Alan.
Missy, it'll be okay.
I know. I'm just so bummed out. We were supposed to go like tonight's my husband's birthday, and it was supposed to be last year on his birthday. Then COVID happened, and it got postponed to tomorrow night. So I'm like, oh, it is what it is. What are you gonna do?
All right.
So, other than that, next meeting is
So
August 18th.
Do we need to come to a decision on town meeting mask wearing?
I mean, if you guys want to voice your thoughts on indoor voice mask wearing, the last time I know we had 1 active case in Mendon, and I let you guys know when that happened. I haven't heard anything from Ann that we've had any additional. Desi's guidance for the fall is, as of right now, vaccinated 7th grade to 12 grade 12. If you've been fully vaccinated, does not have to wear a mask. Same thing for the staff, teachers, whatnot. From kindergarten to 6th grade, as of right now, because they're not vaccinated, everyone has to wear a mask. I'm not seeing any mandated mask wearing, so I mean, I only see it from different towns. You know, I think P-Town did something, Somerville did something, and I think Revere, that there was mask wearing had to be worn indoor city buildings. So that's all I know.
The venue for this meeting, Missy, it's the, is it the gym or is it going to be the auditorium? Do you know?
My understanding, it's the gym.
Okay. Reason I ask is because the gym is a larger area. You know, I know that it'll probably be well attended given the topic. But is there an opportunity for at least making recommendation, which I think Ellen has utilized good sense in the past on these meetings during this pandemic time, to implement social distancing with regard to the seating element, to at least have something like that in play?
I think she was going to do something like that, is try to keep people spread apart than more congregating it together like you normally would in a normal town meeting, but I can double check that with her tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I would be, I would be in favor. I think that's a reasonable element to want to have in place. Of course, you're going to have individuals potentially, that are from the same family. So that would be what you'd call a cohort. So they can certainly sit together, but, strangers having a little proper distancing between, I think, that in of itself goes a long way without mandating a face covering on the indoor situation.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be my take on it anyway.
So just a quick question for Tom and Alan. Tom Maroli is the one he's the new moderator, and he is the one that wants to mandate this mask wearing. And if asked, does the Board of Health support this? My opinion is no, because all what Missy just said, there is no state mandate. Could I have you guys' opinion?
Alan, you want to go first?
I'm kind of torn because I personally enjoy not wearing a mask. However, I don't want to make anybody around me uncomfortable. And then I'm looking at it as it's really the moderator who is running this meeting. So I don't want to be disrespectful of how he wants to run his meeting. So I'm really torn. I definitely would like to avoid going backwards. So I like Tom Fickner's suggestion that it's in the gym and that people practice social distancing much better than having to enforce mask wearing. And I think right now it would be very difficult to mandate that. So I'm kind of torn.
So we can put you down. We can put you down as an absolute maybe.
Hey, does that fence post hurt much, Alan?
Does what hurt? Does what hurt?
The fence post, the one he's sitting on.
What's your thought?
It's not. Fortunately, it's not pointed.
No, that's good. Well, I personally would not be in favor of a mandate. I think given the current guidelines that are in place by the CDC and recommendations, I feel that those are pretty good. I understand you'll probably have individuals that'll choose on their own to have a face covering on, at
Oh,
least
absolutely.
coming through, which is perfectly fine and, respectful of that in all ways. Who knows what that individual may be dealing with either personally or in a family environment or work-wise that necessitates taking the extra steps. If we were in a geographically or demographically a different situation with regard to, say, being a quote-unquote hotspot or concerned for numbers kind of grossly going up, that consideration. But given the current status, I would not be imposing a mandate at this point.
Quick question. How many people do you think at the Pan Mask Challenge next week will be wearing masks?
That's a good question. I mean, you're talking about the participants themselves?
Yeah, I've seen people riding bicycles with masks on recently. I'm like, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
you'll see those. There'll be some. I don't think it's gonna. I think it'll be in the minority. To be honest with you, especially being outdoors. But you'll see some.
That's to keep the bugs out of their teeth.
Yeah, that's right. That's how you tell a happy motorcyclist. Got the bugs between your teeth.
Well, and I'm
No,
respectful.
I-
I'm respectful of your thought, Alan, with regard to Tom's position. And we don't know yet where his authority lies with regard to being able to potentially implement this of his own, under his own authority as the moderator. But irrespective of that piece, I think this kind of steps outside of that a little bit. But I guess we'll have to wait to see what Cindy comes back with. But my thought anyway.
All right, let's wrap it up. How about a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion. Second.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you. See you guys later.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.